Coming up on today's Locked On Bucks, we have an emergency Giannis Inc. board meeting with the founder himself, Ben Golliver, coming up next.
You are Locked On Bucks, your daily Milwaukee Bucks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into Locked On Bucks. I am Justin Garcia. You can hear me on the Bucks Radio Network every single game. We thank you for making this your first listen of the day, each and every day, and for helping make the Locked On Network the #1 sports podcasting network in the industry. Today's episode is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Have your cake and drink it. Ooh, birthday cake flavor is back. No fork needed. Vanilla-y, cakey flavor, caffeinated kick, and no sugar. It's party time. Order now at 5hourenergy.com or find them on Amazon. So as I mentioned, one of the long-standing members of Giannis Incorporated and one of the true believers, the Oracle from Oregon, Ben Golliver, has some thoughts on the future of both Giannis and this Bucks franchise and what he's seen the past couple of years. So we sit down with him, pick his brain on where both parties are headed. What's the national perspective on Giannis, and what do you make of this era of Bucks basketball? One championship to show for it and 2 appearances in the conference finals. We sit down with Ben Golliver coming up next on Locked On Bucks. All right, so joining us now, one of the founding member or one of the founding members of Giannis Inc. Very, very early in the days, Ben Golliver. And I figured if we're going to have the Giannis conversation, which we've had very, very many times already, and a lot of Milwaukee and Bucks fans are frankly sick of it. But who better to share their insights on the national perspective and everything else than somebody that's been here from day one? So, look, let's just start with this, Ben. When you see the last 3 years that the Bucks have had, and like this year especially, feels like there's been a lot that has culminated. But what do you make of the last 2+3 seasons that we've seen from the Bucks and Giannis?
Look, it's two parties trying everything to make it work, and it's just not working, right? I mean, I do feel like there was maybe a natural endpoint or a point of Giannis's career where a lot of stars would have pulled the plug and probably gone somewhere else, and that might have been after 1 or 2 of the disappointing years after the championship run. Instead, they go the other way. They become big-time buyers. They go after Damian Lillard, now this Miles Turner deal, and it's really just reeked of desperation, especially the most recent ones. I thought the Lillard deal would work, but once it was clear he didn't really have that interpersonal chemistry with Giannis, it really wasn't working on the court all that well, that kind of spelled doom for me. And so, especially if we're talking about Milwaukee as a contender with Giannis as the main guy. And so it's just been a very agonizing drip here. And I understand why your listeners are sick of it. I mean, it's been an agonizing season. I don't really know how you spin the positives. A lot of these young guys, they feel like they're going to be here today, gone tomorrow. A lot of just really frustrating players to watch on the team. And I'm sure you could probably power rank the guys who drive you the craziest over the course of a season. And then with Giannis, it's just been really weird. This is not the guy who I thought we knew. He was an incredible leader in the run-up to that championship. I mean, putting his body on the line, obviously playing through the crazy injury, but also, always having his coach's back with Coach Bud for a long stretch there, being a very reliable defensive backbone for the group, always hyping up his teammates, always being so fan-friendly with all the smoothie stuff that people got so excited about. He just felt like that perfect franchise star, and now it's, weird comments almost every single day. It's, you got to read between the lines of almost everything he says, strange body language, these injuries where he's self-diagnosing before he's even getting an MRI. It's just weird, man. And it just feels like he's changed, and he should change because he's gotten a lot older. He's evolved in his career. We can't expect him to remain like 22 or 23-year-old Giannis forever. But I do think this is all this energy, all this momentum is just a sign that it's time to split.
Okay, so I take a lot of that as first and foremost, you are not on board with Ousmane Dieng as clearly a 2027 NBA, all NBA first teamer here from what we've seen through these 3 games. You're not buying the hype.
Well, it's who's the people like to talk about with Joker. It's like, oh, he never had an all-star teammate until Jamal Murray came along. Well, You want to talk about a stripped down supporting cast? I mean, look at this group. Who do you rely on in a big moment? Let's say they did try to make the play-in tournament and try to make
they're going to
try.
Run.
Right. Well, so what we've seen this last couple of years, individual stars aren't winning these playoff games. Teams are winning these games, right? I mean, it's depth, it's energy level, it's intensity, it's defensive focus. Obviously, that's what got Oklahoma City and Indiana through to the finals last year. How many of those characteristics does this Bucks team have? I mean, it feels like even in a best-case scenario, they're going out in 5 in the first round, and you have to start asking, like, what's the point of that? Is there a better way?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny too in that the Dame acquisition, I don't think any of us looked at any potential for negative, and it didn't work out. And to your point, it was pretty clear from the onset of you just kept kind of talking yourself into like, well, they need time, or well, this, and I'm sure we'll see something by the end of the season. Then you had a coach firing, and then there was just more of Dame would start to find his groove. He goes out, Giannis, vice versa, and it never worked. Do you think too part of it is like the Bucks kind of got into this super team business just as that was going out of style in the league?
Well, he needed help. I mean, that was part of the deal too, is, you're looking around and having just a one-man army. If you don't have tons of young players that you've, kind of cultivated through the draft, where, what are your options? I mean, once Milwaukee kind of, traded out a lot of assets to get Drew Holiday for that championship push, there's a natural aging cycle. Guys like Holiday and Middleton are kind of hitting different stages of their career. And so you don't really have the option of pivoting hard and let's go back to a youth movement where we're going to have all these first-round picks and we're going to make these amazing supporting casts for Giannis. Your options were sort of like, well, just double down on what you did and hope that Dame's talent level and his offensive talent is able to boost them up a little bit higher. So I don't think that the big moves that they made were necessarily like, poorly conceived, right? I mean, obviously the Drew trade worked out great. I think that, the Middleton trade was, the first one was an absolute home run. I mean, nobody could have expected how good it was when they got him. But then when they traded him away, I thought it was the right time. I mean, he just didn't have it. They had to shake something up. And then the Dame thing was a calculated gamble that just backfired. We see that happen all the time. Milwaukee's not the only team that deals with that. Look at Golden State. I mean, calculated gamble on Jimmy Butler. It's blown up, and now their season's completely ruined, right? And now they're trying to, send out every first-round pick they have to try to get Giannis, and I guess they're getting laughed out of the conversations at the deadline, right? So, this is something that happens. I think it was natural. Like I said, the trade that didn't happen is maybe the one that's most important, and that's the Giannis deal, because I think there was a window there once it became clear Dame and Giannis weren't working, and once Dame got injured for sure, that's just the natural time to hit the reset button, cash out on Giannis, and try to start a new era. And I think the problem is because this year has been so injury plagued for Giannis, I think that's going to impact his trade value, right? I mean, if I'm another team around the league, I have questions with Giannis when it comes to his ability to fit with other stars. I have questions about Giannis's durability because he's had a bunch of injury issues these last couple of years heading into the playoffs. And then I'm really concerned about his play style. Is this a guy who was, indestructible the first half of his career? Is he capable of still being that guy who plays 75 to 80 games a season? Or is the guy, who gets a calf strain here, a calf strain there, and now he's just kind of like a mascot at All-Star Weekend with his children, who are incredibly adorable. They brought such great energy to Intuit Dome, but we want to see him play on the court, right? And any team that trades for him is going to want to see him play as well. It's a tricky spot to be in, and you can certainly wait too long to make a trade and have that impact what you're getting back.
Yeah, and I mean, I think to that point too, the most troubling, I guess, but the thing that a lot of us have kind of circled too about this season is, man, last year the mid-range was at least reliable for Giannis, and it's just kind of, for whatever reason, it's been gone this season. And that is one of those things of, that feels like something you need to have in your back pocket for a player like Giannis to start to age in this league. So is this the outlier season, or were the last 2 years the outlier season with his mid-range jumper? I think is the other question that would come to other teams viewing this, of what we're going to have to give up, his age, the injuries the last few years, but more importantly too, like, how do we build a team that works around him?
100%. I mean, we know the mid-range has kind of come and gone, but we know the three-point shot hasn't always been there. And the free throws have kind of been shaky, except for in the NBA Finals, by the way, which was just the sweetest part about that championship run was Giannis making all the free throws when it mattered. I mean, that was just ridiculous. But yeah, I mean, I think the shooting is a question. And so you're trying to assemble lineups around him. You probably can't have more than one other non-shooter. Like Houston comes up, right? Well, they got a lot of non-shooters down there. You throw Giannis into the mix, man, that could get real clunky really fast. And so I do think that plays into the idea of how does he fit with your group. It's not only he needs to have the ball in his hands, he's most comfortable as the alpha. He's going to use a lot of possessions, right? But it's also, you can't really trust the shooting, right? And so he's going to be a downhill threat. He's going to be a great playmaker in terms of drive and kick. He's going to be awesome in transition. You can count on those things. But if it's half-court offense, if it's slow down, if it's late in playoff series, you're probably going to want to do better than a Giannis mid-range jumper. I mean, he's not Shea. He's not Kevin Durant. These series come down, you put the ball in their hands, you feel good about it. That's just not really who Giannis has been. And so you better have somebody on your roster who can handle some of those duties if you want to win a championship. And I'm sure he does, because I do still feel like he has a lot of great basketball left in him.
All right. It's probably come across very negative to most of the listeners of it's over, it's time to move on. So I'm going to see if I can talk you into the other side coming up after this. Welcome to the 5-Hour Energy Flavor Draft. We're looking at every aspect of the draft to let you know which tasty flavors are the best and which just might be sleepers. The board is set, the flavors are ready, and only one is going to take home the top spot. With 5-Hour Energy, you have a wide variety of flavors, so there's something for everyone. You can even find some of those flavors sugar-free, and there's a lot of upcoming flavor innovations that are planned. For me, I've always been a grape or a pomegranate guy. You got the Concord Grape Classic flavor, rounded sweetness, consistent and straightforward taste, and that pomegranate boost that you get as well. Richer, darker fruit profile. It's smooth, but it lingers afterwards. But I mentioned some new innovations coming as well. Cherry, that bold style, sweet with that light tart edge, bright, punchy taste, easy to recognize, and a clean finish. Fruity rainbow, sweet, colorful finish, lingers just slightly, smooth and easy drinking texture. Even some other innovations, cotton candy and confetti coming as well. So find your right flavor and style of 5-Hour Energy. Shots available online at 5hourenergy.com or find them on Amazon. And you still have time to sign up for the Everydayer Club. If you are one of those everydayers, it is with us each step of the way. You get boosts and perks by joining the Everydayer Club. Ad-free episodes of every single show we put out there on Locked On Bucks, and access to the Discord channel where you can check in with other Bucks fans. You can even check in on other teams and see what the latest chat is popping up there. So find the link to sign up for the Everydayer Club in the show notes of today's episode. So the whole Giannis discussion and whether or not it's, look, get what you can for the asset, the business move is let's recoup some of this and start to pivot here. There is the other side of it, I think, is tough to kind of explain in a business sense, but for a lot of Milwaukee and Bucks fans, like, this team was irrelevant until Giannis came along. I mean, like, you go from the Kareem days, and they were really good in the 80s, the second or third best team in the conference and the best team to not break through because of the Celtics and the Sixers and the Hawks. But that team never got to that level. And then you got to the 90s, and the Bucks were a doormat. They had that 1 year in the 2001 finals. Other than that, they were basically striving for mediocrity. And, you lost fans within the state. There wasn't a whole lot of appeal outside of the city of Milwaukee itself. And then Giannis kind of started to change that. They're still in a tough spot where the Packers are always going to be king and the Brewers can sell the weather. But we've seen when this team is competitive, there is a very, very strong fan base for the Bucks. So I think a part of it is like, we don't really want to give up on that, and we'll just go down with the ship because we remember what it was like when we would get 5,000 people into the Bradley Center and we were irrelevant. But there are some things they can do this summer. That's been talked about a lot. The tricky part is, what is it that you can do? Like, what level can you realistically expect to get to with some of the flexibility, arguably the most they've had since the summer of 2018? But where does that get you, I think, is the tricky part. And that's what they're kind of juggling is we are not going to choose to trade him. He's going to have to come out and say it is over and enough dancing around this. But what's the cutoff for us? Like, if we can make some moves and we have 3 first-round picks to trade, we do have our exceptions available. If we can do some things that make us on the fringe of like a top 4 team in the East, is that enough? Or is that just more of like, yeah, but we're slightly better, but treading water, and what's that worth?
Well, okay, so you're saying I was maybe a little bit too negative. Fair. I'm talking about it's over this and that, but I'm viewing this as a perspective of this is a first ballot Hall of Famer who is dead set on winning more championships. One thing that can change is that's just no longer the goal, and you're just out there to try to have a good time. We saw that with Dirk in Dallas. They were not contenders for a long stretch of Dirk's later portion of his career. Mavericks fans weren't really bothered by that. I don't think Dirk was bothered by that. You have this great moment. Everybody, trophies and banners last forever. Everybody, remembers the good days, and then you just enjoy the loyalty experience. So if that's what everybody concludes is the best deal, and Giannis gets this huge offer from the Bucks on an extension, and it's like, all right, well, we're all just going to grin and bear it. We're not going to be championship contenders, and we're maybe just going to be average on a good year. Then I'm fine with that. If that's what it's going to make everyone happy, I'm not saying they have to do it.
I think to be clear, one party has already agreed to that. Right. We're just waiting on the other one.
Right. So if that's how it shakes out, then more power to it. But I just think that means the Bucks go back to being a local team. They're not the national team. And they had a really long run there, as you're describing, with Giannis's prime, where they're a national team. It's the Bucks and the Celtics. That's who we talk about in the Eastern Conference. And that just hasn't been the case this year. In terms of the summer plans, I think it's time to have a really honest and brutal conversation about this roster and say how many guys on this team, if you do want to keep Giannis, could be part of a contender. It's a short list. It's a really short list. And I think the other tricky part in terms of if you have flexibility and cap space, whatever, draft picks to trade, free agency is not a thing anymore. You just really cannot get impact players through free agency. And so you have to have a lot of draft picks. And 3 picks is great. It's better than 0, but there's teams like Oklahoma City and Brooklyn who have 15, right? So that's hard to win bidding wars in those kinds of scenarios. I think the one thing that plays in Milwaukee's favor, this is the era of parity. The NBA is trying to spread out the money and trying to spread out the talent as evenly as possible, and we're seeing some teams really make choices to get cheaper, to duck luxury taxes and those kinds of things. So occasionally you're able to pivot more quickly than you might have been in previous eras. A great example of that, by the way, is the Phoenix Suns. They were all backed up with Bradley Beal, just like the Bucks were with Damian Lillard. They have to pivot off of Kevin Durant, just like the Bucks were sort of pivoting off of everybody around Giannis. And here they are with a younger, scrappy team right back in the mix, playing competitive basketball with the fans back on their side in basically 1 year. So you don't want to say Milwaukee's doomed forever. But I do think that they're heading into, to me, what would be a challenging summer because they're no longer a destination franchise. Let's go play with Giannis and win a championship. They're now just the small market team that happens to have Giannis or is embroiled in this Giannis drama, or maybe they're trying to retool after Giannis, and it's not exactly destination priority for guys who might be coveted and desirable, and that's a tough spot to be in. I think the highest priority to me is the first round pick this year, right? And I think the immediate decision they have to make is like, how far do they go into the tank? When you're looking at the standings, there's a lot of teams way below them. And so even if they were to lose every single game the rest of the way, are they really going to improve their draft spot? Not all that much. No. So I think that kind of tells you, hey, if Giannis can come back and play a little bit, maybe it's a controlled tank, you limit his minutes, you make sure you don't win too many games, and maybe you do land up in the play-in tournament like you're talking about. But you do want that to be a really good pick. I mean, I would want that to be a lottery pick, if at all possible, if I'm the Bucks.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, I think realistically the best you could hope for is the 7th position going into the lottery with those teams that are beneath you. But the tricky part, too, is the pick swap. And, I mean, what happens if New Orleans slides down to number 7 and the Bucks win the lottery with that pick? It's still, you'll take number 7 compared to where you were. But that's the other part of the challenge, why they haven't fully embraced just losing and tanking. And the fact that the Eastern Conference, if Giannis wants to play this season, and he's going to, and he wants to compete, they're going to try to win when they look ahead and see, we know we're going to pass Chicago. Then it comes down to which one of those 4 teams in front of us is going to drop out. And, I mean, I'm all for competitive basketball and keeping Giannis in the playoffs. But to your point of kind of, comparing it to, okay, what's the end result though? Because if you win the play-in tournament and you're the 7 seed, it takes a lot of work, right? Let's say they're the 8 seed with where they would realistically finish. Detroit isn't the Bucks or the Celtics or any of those Eastern Conference teams of the past that you would look at as a true powerhouse, but you're still not favored in that series. And, you're still going to probably be picked to lose in 5.
You're going to get killed, man. That's the thing. It's all about the team. Great defensive identity for Detroit, multiple scores. The fit has been excellent. Chemistry has been excellent. You're just praying for an injury at that point. That's sort of your.
Which, if there's any team that's due for it to be on the other end, it would be this group.
Fair point.
Yeah, I mean, it is going to be interesting to see what happens, because I get the impression, from what you said, and I think a lot of people, frankly, probably feel this way. Not so much Bucks fans. But in a sense, the worst case scenario for this group would be Giannis comes back, plays Friday night, and they start to win. And that 5 out of 6 that they've been on, all of a sudden it turns into the Bucks have won 10 out of 12 games. And now they're firmly in the 9 spot in the Eastern Conference and just reaching a spot where, okay, they're in the play-in tournament and there's a good chance they're going to get out of it and get into the postseason. And then again, you're looking at 15, 16 that you're drafting at in the first round, which would be better than what we've seen this team getting for the last decade. But that's the other part of the equation is, the reason that the importance of a very high lottery pick is so huge here is the top end talent in this draft and guys that are, basically can't miss. And those are tough to screw up with the draft. That's a big reason why the Bucks have got into this spot. The picks have either been traded to bring in guys like a Drew Holiday and Dame, or the picks that you made, haven't really panned out. Like since Giannis was drafted, the best draft picks the Bucks have made, Malcolm Brogdon in the second round, Dante DiVincenzo, who you didn't really get to cash in on. He was traded for Serge Ibaka. Like that's been it. There's only been one guy that has been a part of a Bucks draft class that got a second contract since Giannis, and it was Chris Livingston, who was then promptly waived.
Not great. And, you got some misses that are currently on the roster too, I would say. So, it is a challenging spot. That's why I say if my priority, if I were them, would be to try to get up to that 7th spot and take your shot, because we've seen teams within that range or even have worse spots.
7th spot in the draft, you're saying.
Yeah. And well, in the order, right?
Yeah.
Try to get there or close to it, because we've seen teams in recent years from that same range jump up and get a great pick, right? And so, you want to sell some level of hope. I mean, to me, I just look at this group and I don't get the benefit of doing the play-in route, losing in the first round. I mean, we call it the treadmill of mediocrity for a reason. If this was like the first year they had been kind of meh, then okay, why not? We're still adjusting to it. But it's been a long time since we've seen Giannis play, truly relevant basketball. I mean, it's probably that Game 7 against Boston, right?
Yeah.
It feels like ages ago. And so that's why he's frustrated. I'm sure that's why Bucks fans are frustrated. The Bucks fans I've heard from this year have been pretty checked out. It's hard to imagine them turning right back around, waving the flag for a 1-8 playoff series. That's like, I don't know. I just don't get it. It seems like there's a better way here, and it starts with getting younger, fresh face, and just kind of moving out some of this energy. That's the thing, too. It's like the Giannis drama, it just hangs over everything, doesn't it? I mean, you know better than me, but like even during their road trip west, you could just kind of feel it. Everybody's a little uncertain. It's a weird purgatory to be in, and you don't want that to last year after year after year. I mean, that's the definition of insanity. You're doing the same thing over and over.
So there's that's an interesting point that I have something to share on that. We'll get to that, and then the summer as a whole, and basically where you're at, what to expect. We'll check in on that coming up next. New year, new systems, and this is the time when a lot of us look at the messier parts of how we run our business and think there has to be a better way. Well, there is. Streamlining your communications is one of the quickest upgrades you can make. And that's why today's episode is brought to you by Quo, spelled Quo, the smarter way to run your business communications. Because when your team is reachable, organized, and communicating in one place, you're not just working cleaner, you're creating more opportunities to connect with customers. With Quo, your whole team can call and text from one shared business number, so nothing gets missed. Everyone sees the full conversation thread, which makes surprise faster and more personal. It works right from your phone or your computer, and you can even keep your existing number. Plus, with their AI smart tools, you automatically log calls, summarize conversations, and even highlight next steps so details never slip through the cracks. It's no surprise Quo is the number one rated business phone system on G2, trusted by more than 90,000 businesses, from solo operators to growing teams. So make this the year where no opportunity and no customer slips away. Try Quo for free, plus get 20% off your first 6 months when you go to quo.com/lockedonnba. That's QUO.com/lockedonnba. Quo, no missed calls, no missed customers. Workplace chaos, deadlines stacking up, your inbox overflowing, and the one position you have to fill is still sitting open. When the pressure's on and you need the right hire, this is a job for Sponsored Jobs. Indeed, Sponsored Jobs helps you reach the people who actually fit what you're looking for: skills, experience, location. So you're not just hoping the right candidate stumbles across your post. And here's the stat that says it all. In the minute I've been talking to you, companies like yours made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with Indeed Sponsored Jobs. Less time searching, more time actually interviewing those candidates, checking all your boxes. Less stress, less time, more results. When you need the right person to cut through the chaos, this is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help you get that job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. So I think the biggest challenge this team has faced, one of the biggest, because there's been many the last 3 years, is there is just no identity any longer. And with Coach Bud, you had a very, very high floor. You broke through and won the championship in 2021. I'm still going to maintain they win again in 2022 if Chris Middleton doesn't slip on a wet spot, and he's never been the same since then.
And they should have probably won in 2019, and they could have won the bubble. You know, they just
I still don't know about 2019 because yes, you, in the sense that you had a chance to go up 3-0 in that overtime game against the Raptors, but looking back at it, the Raptors were a better team than the Bucks were. I don't think you can dispute that with the way Kawhi took over in that series as well. That 2019, sure. I mean, look, if you make the plays down the stretch and win in overtime and you're up 3-0, then absolutely. But to me, 2022 is the bigger one. But the identity's gone. They were a defensive team. They were excellent at rebounding. They didn't foul. They did all the little things. And then slowly that just started to chip away, where your identity became like, well, we're Giannis and Dame. And now it's just, well, we're Giannis's team, and we're building this team around Giannis, where we're going to optimize him and surround him with shooters. And I think we kind of just lost track of the plot here, where we just viewed it as, well, just surround him with shooters, and that's all you need, similar to how you build around LeBron. When you go back and you look at their best teams and that title team, and that was not it. Like, you had shooting, sure, but you still need individual creators and guys that could score in the half court. You need defensive anchors and help and two-way guys, and that's just evaporated for a number of reasons. That I think that's been the bigger challenge is, you know, we can talk about 3 coaches in however many years, but what is the identity of this group?
Well, I think part of the problem it's out of their hands too, in the sense that the NBA has changed a lot in the last 3 to 4 years. I mean, the pace of play is absolutely insane. And what's the style of play in terms of super aggressive defense? We're seeing full court traps in the playoffs. We're seeing you got to have 2, 3, 4 ball handlers to deal with all of it. And of course, shooting, it matters more than ever as well, right? Like, that's kind of pulling away or drifting away from the Bucks style of like, we're just big and bruising and Lopez and Giannis and, good luck, battling with us inside. It's just a different game than it was at sort of their peak years. And so you have to adjust to that. Shooting is really important around Giannis. Like, nothing's going to work if you don't have that. But getting the kinds of shooters that can also be, elite perimeter defenders, guard 1 through 3 and those kinds of things. Those guys are really hard to find. They've gotten really expensive and every team wants them, right? And so it's been tricky for them, I think, to kind of handle and manage that. In hindsight, was the Damian Lillard move just kind of like a shortcut of like, let's just try to get a big name, cross our fingers and hope it works? Yeah, it kind of looks like that. And he doesn't really fit some of those characteristics I'm describing in terms of what's winning in the playoffs, in terms of being super aggressive two-way player, able to play on and off the ball, be able to be multi-positional defender. Like, he's not any of those things, right? And we're seeing small guards get chewed up across the league in the playoffs, right? So I do think some of this stuff is bigger than just Milwaukee's own decisions. It's the league-wide trends. And, they have just kind of fallen behind a little bit. And again, they're not the only team to do that. You go back and look at some of the other champions from that era. They're, like I mentioned, the Warriors earlier, they're another good example. They've tried to get younger. They've brought in guys like Pods and, Trace Jackson Davis and, there's different names, in a desperate hope to or Kuminga before they traded him, and just none of it's really worked. And now they just look old and slow compared to a lot of the teams they play against, right? So I think there is some natural life cycle to this, but there's also just the NBA is churning through so fast right now in terms of stylistic changes, and Milwaukee's just kind of been left behind, unfortunately.
So you wouldn't have traded Giannis for Kuminga?
Oh, God, no. Dude, come on, man. It's so funny. He got traded into complete irrelevance. Are we ever going to hear the name again? It's not. It's honestly, it's the media's fault for putting so much onto him and his role and kind of the drama in Golden State and how important he was supposed to be for them. I just don't know if he ever showed enough on the court to warrant the amount of conversation that he was generating, right? And I think it was better for all parties they traded him at the deadline. He gets a fresh start. He gets out of that limelight that he's just not really equipped for. And Golden State needs to just move on and find somebody else to blame, right?
Well, and like, I'm curious what you think of it, but like all the notion of the alleged trade offer that the Warriors cobbled together too, and how polarizing of like, this is great versus others looking at it like, are you kidding me? I mean, the picks is something I would bet on if I was in the other team's position and say, okay, we do think it's going to be really rough for you in a couple of years, and we're going to bet on that. Unfortunately, the Bucks have no safety net between then and now with all the other picks that they traded for Drew and for Damian Lillard, that they can't really wait. Like, they need something more in the short term. So I don't think it was quite as bad of an offer. It's just something that doesn't fit what their needs were. But I mean, I'm assuming I know the answer to this. Do you think he's traded this summer?
He should be, and I hope he is for everybody. I just, the vibes I've been getting from the fans, how, the feeling swirling around the organization, all of his comments, which I just have gotten kind of increasingly annoying for everybody who's watching and paying attention and tracking it. It just feels like it's time. So I think it's in everybody's best interest. But, we've also been through this cycle how many times? 7 times. And he kind of winds up getting a big contract and coming back home. And I don't think that's, it's just, like I said, it's a matter of changing your expectations. If that's how it plays out, fine. It's just, you're not going to be a contender, and you're not going to, if it's a 5-year window on his next contract or 4 years, whatever it might be, don't expect another championship. And it's going to be hard to contend during that window. But if that's what they prefer, more power to them. I would love to see a Giannis reboot, though, like, version 2.0, because I think it's run its course. I do think he has some high-level basketball. He's one of the best offensive players in the game. I think you get him around the right pieces, he can get back to really rediscovering that defensive force that we remember. And I think he just, more than anything, needs a clean mental slate. He just, so many times this season has seemed like he's in his head That's not fun to watch. It's not fun to experience for anybody, least of all him.
So is there a team that you have viewed of this is not necessarily where I would like to see him, this is where I think makes the most sense?
Well, the Knicks stuff is out there, and they can put together different types of packages. I would love for Milwaukee to get its picks back from Portland. Obviously, that gets complicated, but it's like, would you rather have Golden State's future picks, or would you rather have your own picks back? You know, if I'm Milwaukee, I would rather be in control of my own destiny and get my own picks back. I think the dream package for Milwaukee is something like, you know, a couple capable veterans from a team like New York, and then a couple of its picks back. Now you control your destiny. Maybe you're not horrible, but you can at least make moves with an eye towards, hey, we don't need to do like a 5-year rebuilding plan here. Like, you know, we're in a decent spot. If you can get something along those lines, I think you do it, you call it good, and you move forward. You know, a lot of times the players in these situations dictate where they get to go, though. And that's the challenging part for Milwaukee is, you know, if it does come to that, you really don't want to trade Giannis to somewhere he doesn't want to go, because we saw how that worked out with Damian Lillard and Portland's side of things. You don't want to be the next version of that. So you want every trade in the situation to be a win-win-win. And that's where agents and representatives really play a huge role. You know, we've seen that a lot in the modern NBA where powerful agents, especially sometimes guys who represent a lot of clients, are able to kind of see these big blockbuster trades from all these different sides and make sure that everybody comes out with something that makes them happy. That's a question mark I have in this particular scenario with Giannis's representatives. I mean, they've done a great job of, you know, keeping him in Milwaukee and getting his brother's deals and all that kind of stuff. But, you know, this is a test of like, if it is time to make a power move, let's see you do it, and let's see you do it cleanly.
Do you think the Knicks would let him open up a store right outside of Madison Square Garden? I mean, there's that too. And like,
that's true.
The tough part too is like, I agree, and get yours back if you can. It's also kind of a tough sell to say, we traded Giannis. What did you get? Well, we got what we used to have. We got what was ours, but we gave it away. Like, you don't really feel like you're getting anything in that sense.
Yeah, but you are, because imagine if you don't have those picks, right? It's going to be long years. It's going to be back to that Bradley Center stuff you're talking about earlier. You know, if you don't have those picks, and now let's say you're winning 30 games, you don't even get to play Tankathon, right? You just don't show up to the games. You know, they're losing, and it's like, well, at least, you know, all you're doing is rewatching the 2021 championship DVD, which is fun, and I highly recommend doing that. As a Michigan football fan, you know, I go back and watch the Rose Bowl about once a week. You know, it's great. You know, beating Alabama is the greatest moment ever. But, you know, you don't want to get caught up in the past. You want to give yourself something to look forward to. And, you know, like the idea of having another team's future is appealing. But what happens if Golden State pulls like what the Lakers just did, and then they snag like Luka out of thin air, right? And so now they have an heir apparent to Steph Curry. Well, now those picks are in the 20s, and you're like, oh, shoot, you know, this didn't really pan out the way we thought. Whereas you can control to some degree how good your picks are going to be as you go through a rebuilding cycle. So I would just want to own my own future, but point taken. It's, you know, you're somebody's like borrowed money from you, and they're just giving it back to you with no interest, right?
Did you ever make it to the Bradley Center?
I did not, but I was there.
Well, you didn't miss much.
Yeah, I was there very early in the Fiserv days, and I totally relate to what you're saying, by the way, about the Bucks increasing importance there locally. I remember the first year I covered them in the playoffs, walking around downtown, there was like still, I mean, they were like one of the best teams in the league. There was hardly any Bucks stuff. And then by the end of it, it was Deer District. It was tens of thousands of people in the streets. You know, I love walking around that new arena because they have all the murals of the Bucks history, which, you know, maybe it's not the most championships, but you got some amazing Hall of Fame players and great moments, great jerseys. You know, the team store was even, you know, pretty loaded with the great purple and the dark green. I mean, it's just a fun experience. The Bucks, you know, and I hate to use the past tense, but the Bucks were just such a great character for national NBA people, right? From, you know, basically 2019 through about 2023. And then ever since then, like you said, no identity. Where do we go from here?
Yeah, good team, no drama. You knew what to expect from him. You knew when you were favored, you were going to win. Like it was a much different time that we got to experience for 6 or 7 years there in Milwaukee. You can keep up with Ben everywhere on the socials and on the Greatest of All Talk podcast as well with Andrew Sharp. Ben, always great to catch up with you. Thanks for the insights.
My pleasure. Sorry if it was too negative. Just trying to keep it real, man.
All right, my thanks again to Ben Golliver for his time here, sitting down with us. You can find him on the Greatest of All Talk podcast. Find him all over social media as well. The Greatest of All Talk show with Andrew Sharp. And as I mentioned, one of the longest running national media members who is Team Giannis. I first got to know Ben way back in 2018 and eventually the next couple of years coming to Milwaukee to cover the playoffs and just how much he was Team Giannis. So a stark contrast to what we heard here earlier today. Camille will rejoin us tomorrow, and we will recap the end of the All-Star break. Take a look ahead to the second half of the NBA season and this team's push for the postseason. One interesting wrinkle that may have helped us out here, us being the Bucks, that we will continue to dig into coming out of Orlando. Thanks to everybody for tuning in to the show again tomorrow. We're going to preview that second half slate. It gets started tomorrow night in New Orleans against the Pelicans. Make sure you subscribe and follow the podcast so you get all of the latest episodes. And if you never miss an episode, the Everydayer Club is what's built for you. Ad-free episodes of Locked On Bucks, plus the members-only Discord, and so much more. You can find the link to sign up for the Everydayer Club in the episode notes of today's show. For those of you on video, we send you to the first ever 24/7 national NBA YouTube channel. On audio, make sure you make that your second listen, NBA Game Night on Locked On NBA. We'll talk to you once again tomorrow on Locked On Bucks.